A joke can be wrapped around a controversial topic to make it more palatable. I fully agree, Tease, that story is the most powerful force of mind control and mind influence on the planet.
All right, so we do have in studio the filmmaker par excellence. His name's Teace Snyder. Uh, you guys might have seen a little conspiracy synergy floating around out there. That's his editing stylings and narrative and creativity coming to the market. But recently, he's been like traveling around and meeting interesting new people and then helping to like memorialize some of the hard, diligent work of those who have been out there in the truth fields, trying to get truth out to the public without getting whacked in the killing fields of Cambodia because they don't like intellectuals in this place. And you start asking too many questions, they're like, "We got ourselves a reader here," and they gang up. And it's like one of those, you know, uh, not They Live, but like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. We just call them NPCs these days. Taste, how you doing?
I'm doing really well, thanks. Quick interjection before we move on to my thing.
Oh yeah.
Nostradamus and the plan. I can't read it backwards. Nostradamus and the Planets of Apocalypse. New evidence of the global disasters coming in 2040 and 2046 by
Ooh,
Jason Brashear. So on the money, Rich, as
there
usual.
you go. And you got a ripple effect. That's a shout out to the Ricky Varandas up in.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him for a while. I'm gonna have to tell him to come down, and we should hang out and have some bourbon. But nice to see you. And I also like how you're supporting your fellow independent journalists, not just with your filmmaking, but with your stylings. And I too, I'm supporting the man formerly known as Alex Jones because you can't call him that anymore because they own his name now. He didn't have the
Okay.
$2 trillion, and they just took his name.
Hey, I kind of am too, but it's not unofficial. Alex Jones shirt from the infamous Alex
That's Space
Joe
Force.
Rogan appearance. Yeah, from his Joe Rogan appearance. Space Force, baby.
Hardy, hardy. So, Tease, you're back in your home, or are you still on the road?
No, no, I'm back in Canada now. Yeah.
I didn't know if you had like a tiny house on a dually and you had bookshelves in there just like that, and
No, no, it's not that or a green screen. It's actual books behind me. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I'm peering at them right now. So, this piece that you've brought this week for our consideration, uh, tell us about like what inspired you to make it. Why would you go through the trouble to shoot footage and travel and edit and make a vignette? And what is a vignette? Let's start with definitions.
Oh, yeah. So you're way better at those than I am. And I think the one that you gave is pretty good because that's what it is. So easy way to understand it is basically be like a montage, or at least that's kind of what it is in a simple translation. And this is really to kind of just field all of your questions, a further extension of the last episode that was shown on this. And that being because each of these miniature sort of vignettes, mini documentaries that feature a particular person from the truth movement are at a certain juncture, hopefully going to be compiled together to tell the broader picture of what has been happening in the truth community. Now, I want to do that by choosing some of the best and brightest. And I see Derek Bros as one of those individuals. Over the course of his development, the founding of the Greater Reset, which has since been rebranded as the People's Reset, his moving into Freedom Cell Network, the show Pyramid of Power, which Rich has appeared in, and then also the Independent Media Alliance. And those are some pretty important things that are all coming out of one person. And that one person touches on the orbit of the conversation that we're all in. So it's really to try and give an accurate portrayal of the story that's happening, that we're all a part of. Every single one of us, even if you're just listening, we're all a part of this story that is unfolding. And I really want to do justice to that and to kind of just give it to people so that they can have access.
Well, you did, and it leads to even like more antics because after you premiered your piece with Hervoye, we had him on the show and we had a rip roaring time. That was such a good connection, right? And that's also because of Scott, because he's out there, he's the bumblebee, like pollinating everywhere, meeting everybody. And you had to leave Canada to go have some fun, trigger some complexity, go travel, meet some new people. So it's like those breakthrough actions that introduce people to a larger thing, and you're doing it in a multifaceted mosaic way, and it's vignettes, so it's like pictures in pictures. It's like picture in picture. I was being sarcastic when I defined it. I was like, it's a bunch of pictures. I was being a little bit facetious, but thank you for noting that my facetiousness was a little bit accurate, and we could come up with a better definition. But if you don't know what a vignette is, you'll find out when you watch the vignette.
I like ultimate history lesson. Opening question, is a metaphor a lie?
Well, art
No.
is a lie too.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things. I like to think of it as a lie
Hey,
that shows the truth.
right? Like, if I had a piece of art, I would say, you could see that as a mountain. I could see it as a bunch of paint brushes on the screen. But in either case, like if the mountain exists, if I painted a mountain, it's not the mountain itself. It's something to show you like why you would want to go stand in that place and see that view. Right. So it's like, I think art is almost like what is necessary to be created to direct the message of the outside into the cave to have slaves set themselves free, because if we go in there and try to do it ourselves, they kill us. That's the story, right? And many times in public, when you try to do it directly, you do have that reaction. As opposed to if you can get the picture of nature on the wall in the cave, and they're like, "Hey, there's a better picture instead of these shadows. Like this is full color. Where's that coming from? Oh, they have a mirror out there and they're shining an image in here." That's almost like what cinema is, and
Fundamentally
thus
agree. I think
vignettes.
it's a profound insight to what I would hope will facilitate a greater awakening process, which is film language. And because of the habitual entrainment of us over time, and also just the raw power of the silver screen, that does have the ability to accomplish exactly just what you alluded to. And that's deeply meaningful, which is why not only the creation of these things, but the sharing of them can facilitate a completely different paradigm.
For sure, dude. Let me ask you, it's like a tangent question, but it ties in. Do you ever read this book?
I can't read the thing, but
That
maybe.
means you didn't read it.
Okay.
Anyone who's read this book would know it by the cover. I'll put it closer. Robert Rodriguez, Rebel Without a Crew.
Oh no, sorry.
All right, see, you became an independent filmmaker without a manual of like, here's somebody who's like done it harder than you'll ever have to try. So you have no excuses. So, did you do some literary kind of reading intake back in the day when you wanted to make films? Did you like did you read Hitchcock, Truffaut, or watch those interviews, or did you do any historical like I'm a procrastinator before I can do anything. Oh, I can't pick up that camera. I have to read the history of cinema first.
No, no. So like it's a really great question, because everyone can come at art or creativity from a different direction, and there isn't necessarily one right path. So I can kind of just touch on what mine has been and how I've come to this point and how it's just come to fruition. So I started off basically like slathering my hand on a keyboard, trying to print out words to then give it to my parents to see if I'd accidentally typed anything, as in to say that I desperately wanted to write. I wanted to communicate prior to the point of being able to do so. And so that was just an intuitive drive. It was some understanding that that was a communication that I needed to lend to the world. And then later on, I saw the movie Jurassic Park and I really liked it. And I wanted to make a sequel to it. And I decided to start trying to do that out of Play-Doh in my parents' garage. And it turns out that that's kind of complicated and it's really inexpensive. And it's not so good for a kid to try and approach it. So I figured, okay, I'll try writing books instead. So I started writing my first book at around 10 years old and it was awful and terrible. And so you got to try another one and you do another one and you do another one. And eventually you've written a whole bunch of books that nobody's ever going to read, but you develop along the way. That's an important thing. A lot of people think that creating something is all about just that creation. A lot of the time, it can be the next creation that comes after it. So it's one of those things where it's a learning curve and you build off of it. And at a certain point, I was able to go to film school. And the thing that motivated me to go to film school was an idea that I'd had reflecting on 9/11 truth, which is ultimately how I came to meet Rich, was through a short film that I created called Blindfold. And the motivation for that was at the time, I thought, well, people are going to be waking up pretty quick to this. Surely they'll figure out the truth of 9/11 in a relatively short time frame, given how obvious it is. Well, it turns out here we are about like 15 or so years later, and they still haven't figured it out, or it hasn't been an acceptable piece of conversation in the mainstream media.
What year
And
did you make Blindfold?
Blindfold would have been about like starting production versus when it's released around 14 to 15 years ago.
All right, and where can people see it today? Is it
So
on your
Blindfold
site?
is, you can still find it on my YouTube channel. You can find it on the original Vimeo posting of it. I have a clip of it in my Conspiracy Synergy, one of them, but it's best to go to teace.ca, and it's one of the short films featured there. But the basic underlying drive of what my art ultimately culminated in was an attempt to approach controversy in a landscape where controversy is so contentious in society now that people just freak out about it. They can't handle it. But if you package controversy within a story, then people are excited about it. All of a sudden, the thing that scared them, now it excites them. And so that's a pretty powerful philosophical jujitsu. And that's what Blindfold was designed to do for 9/11 Truth. And then through that, I continued the research. You're once again yourself being a significant part of that, Corbett as well, Passio. You spiral out from there. Eventually, you find yourself on a road that plenty of Titans have been on before, and you're trying to help them open that next door and get the people who are still in that cave to explore a little bit more. And that's kind of the idea. Art is a metaphor that allows us to approach things that a lot of people would just run screaming from. And that's more important now than ever.
I agree. What do my co-hosts think? Do you think it's important, guys?
I was going to say, just because of the limitation of words, the tyranny of words, and the limitations that places on our thought, that's part of why art is so transcendent, because it can communicate concepts and emotions that sometimes transcend our ability to communicate in just mere verbal rhetoric. You know what I mean? The color, the music. Like, I also happen to agree, and that combining all these art forms together makes something that can touch people and educate them and thrill them all at the same time. And just like a joke can be wrapped around a controversial topic to make it more palatable, I fully agree, Tease, that a story is the most powerful force of mind control and mind influence on the planet, right? You don't necessarily sell a product, you sell a story. And that story, yeah, it's like this magic sugar wrapping around a pill of controversy that makes it not just palatable, but sometimes it's yummy. You're like,
Well, and
wow,
the difference is that the audience is already inculcated into the negative side of that narrative structure. It has been used to shape and limit, right? So to use narrative structure for freedom, for an equal and opposite effect, has to be able to balance the scale. And so propaganda in its original use wasn't a negative connotation. It just meant to propagate a data set. It's almost like education. And then it started taking a negative connotation because people started doing more open psychological warfare. And then people were like, hey, that's propaganda. That's war propaganda. You're promoting just one side and not showing people like the downside of war. Because admittedly, it would be very hard to sell Liberty bonds for World War One if you showed people the carnage and the deformed people. Like if you read to the end of War is a Racket by Smedley Butler, there are some pictures in the end of that book that are very hard to stomach. And some people are like, those are fake pictures. I'm like, okay. Do you ever read about Verdun and the other conflicts that went on back then? Do you have any idea what people who are your ancestors probably had to go through, if not fighting and dying, then fighting and living with maimed bodies or, trauma and turmoil? I mean, that's like a sub theme of Peaky Blinders. All those dudes have PTSD from World War One, and they like, that's a whole like sub theme that's still is part of the century of warfare that we're still in right now. Century plus 10 years probably at this point. But yeah, Scott, did you have
Yeah.
thoughts on the initial part of like the creativity and the artistry? Because that's what the Robert
Of course.
Rodriguez Joe Rogan interview was about, and I think that's like the key to solving all these problems. That's key to problem solving.
100%. And Tease, man, you know how much I love and respect your work because you're able to deliver this information in a way that's so engaging and visually artistic. Like your conspiracy synergy videos are pretty much the best thing out there in the whole conspiracy realm, I think, dude. They're just so unbelievable and they get better and better. And so I want to encourage everybody to make sure when we're done here, go after the show, go watch all of his conspiracy synergy series. And it's like I want to get your thoughts on this because we were watching the clip from the Rogan interview with Robert Rodriguez last week, and he was talking about how like he feels like his art gets pulled out of the ether, like the art already exists, and we're just conduits for bringing it into existence. And it's like when you're playing music, like I have that experience all the time. It's like the music has a direction that it needs to go, You know, it like has its own, eventually it has its own momentum. Or even with writing, like you were describing writing, I've done a lot of creative writing too. And it's like I have an idea of where I want to go, but once I start writing, it takes on a life of its own and the characters and the dialogue, and I go in a completely different direction than I ever intended to. And then, like when I was making my music videos for my album release, there was one spot in one song where I was pulling B-roll footage of like police, like these chicks getting arrested by the police, that lined up with the music in so many different spots, to the point where I just like sat back and I'm like, okay, I'm not even in charge here anymore. This is literally like I am just the vessel for manifesting in this into reality. And it's like such a powerful experience when you get in that zone. And I feel like with the stories you tell, with the narrative that you then attach to the visuals, like it almost feels like you're just in that zone all the time and you're just pulling it together. And then also when when you're editing, it's like I know immediately what it needs to be, and then it's just a need to just manifest it. So where does that idea come into my head of what needs to go right there? Like what are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, no, you're alluding to the idea that at a certain point it's aligning yourself with intuition. You can think from an animal kingdom perspective, instinct is the highest state, whereby from our perspective, intuition is. So it's navigating your experience of creation in alignment with your own sense of intuition and not trying to step on it too much with the destructive force of thought. Now, at a certain point, that needs to come in, because if you're just doing an interpretive dance number to represent the geopolitical situation we're in, you might want to rethink it. So it's kind of a combination of different things that you're able to stack up over a course of the refinement of the project. To a certain extent, and I guess I just describe art and life in the same way. Things happen out of order in a way that makes sense later. If you're trying to be too much in control, you're probably going to trip yourself up, and then it's not going to work. And then once you step away from it, it will kind of reveal itself outside of your closed grip.
Very true. I can relate to that. Yep.
The universe won't slip through your fingers then.
Yeah, or the
What you're saying.
inspiration comes and then but you need more information, you need more experience, you need more ingredients to bring it to fruition, and you don't quite have it yet.
Well,
So,
you don't get those things unless you take action.
yeah.
Like if you weren't playing a song, you wouldn't be figuring out the next notes, right? If you weren't writing a story, you wouldn't be figuring out like the next chapter. So some of that is just like getting in touch with your higher self, which is just like, your brain continues to exist in the future. It's the same infrastructure. You might be able to say what will be a nice thing for myself in the future and start like planning ahead instead of like living like, it's good to be in the present, but we are creatures that also have to plan ahead. And in order to plan ahead effectively, we have to be able to solve problems and have accurate data to make those plans on. And we are filled in with an environment, that gives a lot of noise to the signal and keeps people from planning effectively, making good choices, decisions, judgments, etc. So art helps to bring that alignment. It kind of puts people in neutral because they're in entertainment mode, and they're open to considering new ideas, which would be too controversial maybe to, discuss among students in school, right? So like, instead of that, like I always said, if you were smart enough to plan a bank robbery, then just write the movie script for it because it'll be hella entertaining. That's legal, and you can make money on it longer term, low risk. Like, why would you actually go and risk hurting yourself, hurting other people in order to get like debt note coupon things that are like, oh, this is question for the night. This is a quick tangent. Did you know Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple Computer, he prints his own $2 bills, and they are legal tender to spend into the marketplace. And he buys this special paper, and he prints his own money. A $2 bill is still acceptable. And I'm wondering, can you pay property taxes and whatnot with $2 bills? Because I'm interested more now in the story, like the actual, like what are the details, instead of like that was an interesting little piece of trivia about Wozniak that I've had for a year or so. So do you guys know anything about that?
Okay, so
Anything?
really we just need to clone Wozniak and then have a bunch of him printing $2 bills in order to offset the Federal Reserve.
See, now there's a movie. Get Wozniak on board,
We'll have
bro.
Michael Keaton play it as a sequel to Multiple.
Multiplicity 2.
Yeah.
All right. So this week's vignette, it's a new word, and you use it 3 times and it's yours. This week's vignette is on Derek Bros. Where was Derek when you filmed him?
Yeah, so this was in Morelia, It's in Mexico. It's where the People's Reset has been hosted the past few years. They're also branching out to do it in other locations as well, trying to encourage it to become more of a recurrent global phenomena that fosters the exit and build mentality. And so that's where I went to visit him. I was there for the full time that the festival was going on. Then I went with Hervoje to Guadalajara to film the documentary that we showed last time. Flew back to hang out with Derek for 3 days when he wasn't hosting a festival, and I'm just like tracking him around, and that's where it came from.
That's a long way from your house, Morelia. Like, how is that, thousands of miles? Like, this wasn't just down the street and it was convenient. You
Nah.
had to like take it upon yourself to travel through two different countries to be able to get this type of footage.
Well, yeah, I was in Mexico for 3 weeks straight, and I was doing the first documentary was on Derek Rose, the second one was on Hervoje, and then the third one, Charlie Robinson, that's at Anarchapulco, and I'm lumping that into the next one, which is going to include the smorgasbord of different characters that we had out for the Third Eye Carnival, like Scott Armstrong, like LD was there, uh, Sam Tripoli, Steve Fukoinen, Seven Seas, all of these individuals,
Kurt Metzger was
and
there.
what's up?
Kurt Metzger was there too, because I
He
saw
did
a
show
picture
up.
where he looked real big at the end of the table, like he was a giant. He is a
Yeah, no,
giant, but
he
yeah.
showed up very, very briefly. I don't know if he's going to end up making it into the documentary, but the basic idea being that at a certain point, the convergence of these characters is enough to like start garnering some more public support for the community at large. And then when that happens, whoa, that's some serious momentum. So it's that kind of idea and showing that that's a global phenomena and it isn't just like couple of losers sitting in a basement. Oh, by the way, this is a really big thing and it's all over. So maybe we should pay attention. I think that's important. So you give people some perspective on the scale. This is happening everywhere. They just haven't been able to hear about it because technocrats are control of the airwaves.
Yeah, what I
Well,
see is like people like Derek are being towed in to ride this monster 100-foot wave, and you're on the jet ski towing them in, and like one by one, you got your Teace Snyder effect. That's what I'm calling that. Go ahead, Scott.
well, I was just gonna say, I know everybody in the audience is asking the same question, but it's when is the Richard Grove documentary coming out?
It's in
I
the
don't, you'd have to
future.
ask Rich on that one.
It's in the
I'd
future. He hasn't
obviously.
been here yet.
Well,
Okay.
okay. Are you gonna be at Porkfest?
Mm. So far, yes.
Okay.
I got
Planning
many
on being there.
spaces and I have other projects that should end right before Porkfest. So hopefully, if the good Lord wants me at Porkfest, I'll be at Porkfest. That is the plan. But also, I know that man plans, God laughs. So apparently, I'm amusing, which makes this a comedy show sometimes, like 3% of the time, but other times we're
Well,
serious.
if it's gonna be tragedy and hope, you're probably gonna want some comedy in there.
That's right. It's just like the Motley Crue, you know, album cover from 1984,
That'd be
Theater
a
of
great
Pain.
title for it. Tragedy, hope,
Comedy and tragedy.
comedy.
Like, I don't even think they knew about the Greek academic plays. Do you think Vince Neil was like, oh, comedy and tragedy? I don't know. Does he have an accent? I don't even know. He's not a very good driver, I heard. And they crashed a plane too. So anyway, Tragedy and Hope. It's the name of a history book for those of you playing at home, but it's also the tragedy of what we're handed versus the hope of what we can make from these raw material items. You know, they don't want us to be free, but maybe we could squeak freedom out anyway.
I agree with that. What's the story of how we accomplish that?
Day by day, doing things not in a gangster way.
Yeah.
By learning how to build value and trade and barter. And when you need to go earn money in the market, here's how to do that. And here's how you can make, investments into things maybe you can eat in the future, right? Put some money into your yard, not by poisoning it or buying a bunch of Scott's lawn fertilizer type stuff. Maybe put a plum tree or a blueberry bush or, things that work without electricity and might feed you in the future, just in case any one of a laundry list of things happen. Right? It's not just like solar flares and stuff like that. You got to worry about World Economic Forum and their next bird flu type thing where they might say, and they might bring in the UN and say, we're going to enforce this with some, people from the other side of the world who have 1 billion people and they don't speak your language. So like those types of things are, potentials. I don't want to give them more percentage chance of happening, but it's like, small percentages.
Yeah.
So
Multifaceted, convergent, unconventional warfare in perpetuity. Fun.
could be, but I think Sisyphus was happy. He was the original workout guy. He was like the Jack LaLanne of olden times. Who's old enough to laugh at Jack LaLanne? Come on. That dude's active guy. All right, so Teace, do you want to set up this vignette?
This is the story of Derek Bros, and then it kind of builds into the story of the Independent Media Alliance, which touches on a lot of different people. It's designed both to give a picture of kind of a brief snippet of his life, but really more than that, to touch on the events that are affecting all of our lives. And it's done in a way in which it's relatively short. It's only 15 minutes. It's palatable. It's emotionally calibrated. I'm not trying to make you feel something so you believe it. I'm trying to help you feel things that are happening, because a lot of people have been suspended in a state of disbelief. So this is really just trying to give people the tools that they need to be able to pass on to their friends and family and get them in the know of tuning into this show.
That was a superlative answer, because most filmmakers would have said, "Bro, I made a film, so I don't have to say it in words. Why are you doing this to me?" But
All right.
you had it. That was excellent. Colby, let's go ahead and roll. This is a conscious resistance mini documentary, and also over on the Derek Bros Conscious Resistance page, you can find likewise. Is this the longer version on Derek's page?
No, so I think he's reposting the doc, because that's the way these docs work. It's like I make them for free off of the donations that you viewers give me, so that I can then give it to the content creators as well, so that it's able to reach more people. They can clip it, they can do whatever they want with it. The idea is I want to provide the free media services that if I were billing for would just get in the way of the process. No, we're up against like billionaires who are trying to kill us, honestly. And so let's help each other out here. So this is one of the things where that's just the same thing, but they also did clip it to use as an excerpt for the Independent Media Alliance. So I don't know exactly what that is, but that's something that Ryan Christian put out today.
Twice a year, I teach a course called Autonomy. It's a 12-week course. It teaches leadership, entrepreneur skills, executive skills, all these types of things that I saw were taken out of our education system in order to make the schooling or indoctrination system that we've all probably went through. And it has served us well enough to be interchangeable cogs in the machine of the globalists. But if we want a homestead, if we want write our own ticket, work from home job, work from anywhere type of situation, they're not exactly handing those out at the end of college. They give you a piece of paper and they're like, good luck. So reality is dropping us off here, but the demands of reality are up here. So I created Autonomy to help people close that gap for themselves so they can level up their skills to the demands of the situations that life is putting in front of us presently. Life's demands of intellect and understanding precision and complexity are ever increasing. The schooling didn't prepare us for it. The media is not going to do anything but reinforce what schooling prepared us for. And so we're going to have to take a leadership position and take steps off the beaten path to kind of blaze our own trail in life. What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come